Hey guys, what's up? Matt Friedland here from the 360 Music System, and in today's video I wanted to address a question that maybe some of these guitar players who are watching may have in terms of how do I teach a beginner guitar student? So I've been teaching for several years. I've worked with several beginners, many beginners, and I've kind of devised, I know what works and what doesn't work for beginners. And the idea is I can give you some tips today on how to make beginners, happy to take lessons with you and continue taking lessons with you so they're paying you month after month after month after month, that kind of thing. And just some strategies and methods that I hope you get use out of. So if you find value in this video, just please like, share, subscribe, follow the page, all that good stuff. And yeah, in today's video, I want to share with you 5 tips or 5 concepts that can help you more effectively work with beginner guitar students, whether you're just getting started out or whether you have some experience teaching and you're just looking for some new ways, new methods that can kind of make the whole process more conducive for yourself and for the student. So by all means, let's get started here. So I got some notes here. Tip number 1 is you want to establish a connection with your student. So this can occur at different points in time before you start working with them, or maybe in your first lesson with them. It just depends. Maybe you're meeting with them first before they're deciding to move forward with you as a guitar teacher, or maybe you're working at a music store or studio and you're meeting them for the first time in their first lesson. So in either case, I think it's important that they get comfortable with you to start with, because if they're not comfortable with you, if you don't have a rapport, everything else beyond that is going to be very difficult to accomplish. You're not going to help them move forward in their guitar playing. They may be resistant, they may not like it, and you'll lose the student, and then, that's just not what we want to happen. So when you build a connection with the student, generally what I would recommend doing is you just ask a lot of questions to find out and learn more about them, and maybe explain to them the first time you meet them or in the first lesson, hey, appreciate you coming in today and happy to start working with you, and my name is, whatever your name is, and I'd like to learn more about you so that I can help you in your journey with playing the guitar. And you can obviously ask, what music that you like, what are some things that you'd like to accomplish by working together, so you can learn what can I help you with. And, depending on the student, they may be able to express that to you. If they're, adults, they'll probably be more clear about that with you. Or if they're, kids, teenagers, or, like the ages of like 11 to 12 or something like that. If the kids are like 9 and under, usually they're pretty hesitant to communicate. So it's good to have a parent in the room at the same time so that they can kind of help establish a rapport with you and the parent and the child as well, if they're younger than 9 years old or that kind of thing. And so the thing is, this does is it shows that you care. You're interested in learning about them, and you're really there to help them. So they'll start to feel comfortable with you, so that they'll start to trust your teaching, your insights, and what you're trying to help them do. If they don't feel like that you care about them, or they don't trust you, that they may be very hesitant. They might think, hey, maybe this isn't a good fit. Maybe they'll look elsewhere. Maybe they'll think guitar isn't for me, and then they're going to want to quit or something like that. And then you don't have a student and things don't really work out. So first thing is just establish that rapport and connection. It might seem kind of straightforward and obvious to do that, but really makes a difference to kind of set a foundation for success moving forward for you to build off of with that student. The other thing is you can do with this when you establish the connection with the student is you can kind of learn about their musical interests and what they like, and whether that's actually something that you can help them with or not. So, for example, if somebody comes to me and says they want to play, country guitar and Travis picking or something like that, that's awesome and I can help them get started, but that's really not my thing. I'm a jazz guitar player, rock, blues, fusion. I play with a pick and I play electric guitar. I'm not really an acoustic guitar player. So I can help a beginner get started with that. But if that's really their true ambition and they're serious about it, I would want to know that up front and say, okay, well, how can I help them? Or maybe I'm not the best fit and maybe I'd have to kind of pass them off to somebody else rather than kind of go through a struggling relationship with them. The other thing about, I think, starting with establishing a connection with them is, also establishing some expectations like, hey, I'm here to help you. Here's what I'm going to help you do. I'm going to help you learn songs. I'm going to help you understand how to practice. We're going to play together. It's going to be fun working together. So they say like, okay, cool. This is going to be a good experience, and they're going to want to move forward. So building that rapport and establishing that connection up front is super important to getting off to a good start beyond that. Second thing is you would want to establish your form of communication. And this is critical because you can't move forward to help them if they don't understand how you're trying to teach them. And so this might seem obvious, but this kind of is something I recommend spending a lot of time with. Now, if they're beginners, you might want to find out, well, what do you know already? They might say they're a beginner and they might actually know a few things, but sometimes or often they don't know anything. And so that's okay. You would say, it's okay, you don't know. I just want to know what you know, and then so I can help you move forward. So when I say establish the form of communication, the first thing I would start with beginners, obviously they have to understand a couple things. The string numbers, because you're going to be telling them what strings and frets to play and that kind of thing. I also explain to them in the beginning, like, here's how to hold the pick, and show them how to hold the pick and make sure they're holding it correctly. And then I kind of say, okay, when we're holding the pick, here's what we're doing. We're striking on each particular string and getting them to understand what the string number is. So obviously, I'd have them play, here's string 6. It's at the top of the guitar. Have them play on that just to get a feel for it. And have them do it multiple times. Maybe see if you can get a steady tempo going for them. Just see if they can keep a beat or that kind of thing. Okay, cool. So the top string sounds good, and have them go through, okay, here's the 5th string, and so on. Have them play through the string so that when you tell them what string to play, they know which string it is. And the guitar is kind of backwards, right? String 1 is at the bottom, string 6 is at the top. It's always confusing for beginners. So you want to establish what string that is and have them play the strings. Tuning at this point, I don't think is really that important because you don't want to take too much time showing them how to do that without getting them to do stuff and play, and moving forward. They may get impatient with you. Tuning may come a little bit later down the road here. So the important thing is establishing the line of communication. Once they have the strings, like you've identified the strings for them, you may need to tune up their guitar for them. If you can do that really quick, that's probably a good way to go. And then what I would do is just ask them, hey, just play the strings with me. Like just play the top string, 8 times in a row with me. Just get them playing. Feel like, hey, I'm supporting you. Real easy stuff. Next string, you know what I mean? Real simple. Giving them like little wins along the way are really important for them to trust you and build their confidence in you. Okay, so you go through the strings, they get to hear what the strings sound like, and then you can quiz them. So you can say, okay, well, play string 2 for me. And they go, okay, string 2. Okay, awesome, great job. Give them positive feedback. How about play string 5 for me? Right, so you get them, quiz them multiple times to get them to do something so that sinks in, so that they understand, hey, here's the string numbers, because that's going to be super critical for you to establish that when you're giving them more information, in future lessons. The next thing to establish a form of communication is like how, the frets work. Again, this might seem kind of intuitive, but, again, beginners don't really know this stuff. So you have to kind of explain, well, the frets are these regions in between the actual metal bars, which are the frets. They're just numbered, and have them count. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. And pointing out, hey, these dots on your guitar are helpful. They're like references so you can see where you are. And maybe establish, hey, do you notice where the dots are? They're in the middle of the fretboard. They're on the top of the neck in most cases. They're pretty standard. If you notice, here's on fret 3 and fret 5 and 7 and that kind of thing, so that they understand, okay, the numbering system. From there, it's usually like, okay, let's try playing a note. Usually beginners have to kind of get comfortable pressing on the strings, and you show them the technique of like how to press on a string, and they may struggle with that in the beginning, particularly little kids. So I usually have them play the bottom string, maybe the 5th fret, because it's easy to see and it's easier to press down. And once you get them to play that, getting the note to be clean, again, they have to play it about 4 to 8 times to get a good feel for it. So you might say, hey, play this with me. If you can get it 4 times. Give them time to process the information and play stuff and be patient with them. Okay, so once they get that, then you can kind of explain, okay, well, let's find fret 3 on that string. So say, okay, we'll locate it and count it and help them with that and have them play fret 3. And say, okay, well, let's play fret 7 on that string. Okay, cool. And they find that and they play fret 7. You say, okay, well, how about let's play string 2, fret 3. So you go, okay, well, let me see where I can find that. So the idea is that you're establishing like what string and fret to play when you start explaining songs or other things to them, and have them play it. So you might want to quiz them on that. Ask them a string and a fret. Play string 3, fret 2. You give them time to find it, right? Because it's new to them. Okay, string 3, fret 2, where is that? What does that mean? Okay, cool. And they play it, and then give them positive feedback like, yes, awesome, good job. Okay, makes them feel good. Now, on top of that, you may want to explain how tablature works. It's probably a good place to start. Notation will come later down the road. I think it's really important. If you don't read standard notation as a guitar player, I think you should learn how, because I think it's going to be helpful to you to communicate to the student. But teaching the student how to read notation is not critical right away. But tab can help because it makes sense. Okay, string number, fret number, and that kind of thing. So you may have to establish that. If you have a handout, a printout, or something like that, you can show them, okay, here's how tab works, and find this string, find this fret, and that kind of thing. So, all these things add up. By the way, you might want to explain, here's your fingers on the guitar. Use finger 1, 2, and 3. All these basic things. So you're saying play string 1, fret 3 with finger 1, and go slow enough so that they can say, okay, cool, that makes sense. I know where that is. Awesome. So we've now established a language of communication so that you can present new information to them and they can process it easier, make your life a lot easier, and they'll be able to progress and feel good about it. So establishing your form of communication is important in the beginning stages. The third thing is you want to get them playing as soon as possible. You want to avoid doing a lot of explaining and a lot of talking. And as soon as you play something, like for example, say, hey, play fret 5 on string 1. And say, great, okay, and then you're talking again. Get them to play it like, 4 to 8 times. Get them to, experience that act. I mean, this is the reason why we're learning guitars. We need to play, right? So they have limited skills, but with those basic concepts, hey, just play it. Give them the time to play that. Move it somewhere else. And then play with them. So they were like, oh, wow, I'm actually doing something with somebody. So, that's usually first step is like avoid too much explanation, too much talking. I mean, of course, you have to do that up front, to kind of convey what you're trying to communicate to them. But, every little piece can be played in a different ways, like just playing the open strings together. Hey, let's go through all the strings to start with. Maybe put on a drum beat, just play to the drum beat, go through all 6 strings. You get their time going. And so also this kind of like elongates your lesson as well. So you don't have to constantly be talking. I mean, keep in mind that the more that you say, the less that is actually retained, particularly for younger students. So you might be going on with all this information. They might have lost you like, 5 minutes ago. So playing and letting it sink in so they also understand, hey, here's what I can do at home. So when they leave you, they have an idea what they can do so they can kind of, come back with some kind of progress in the next lesson. Playing with them is super important. And I think establishing with them like songs up front is really important for them to feel good about their experience, have fun, so they understand how to practice and play and that kind of thing. And keeping things simple. So tunes that I usually start with beginners are usually 1 note at a time or 1 string at a time kind of thing. I don't recommend teaching them chords. That's too much dexterity for their hands and all this business going on with the mechanics. They're going to struggle and they're going to get frustrated most of the time. So if it's a single note thing, like a bass guitar kind of approach, usually I think that's, most of the time, that's more efficient and productive for beginners. So I try and pick songs that are popular in the rock, blues, popular music realm that they'll know, because that's really important. If they're familiar with the song, or even if it's just a song in general, like, hey, that's music. If you kind of work out of like method books and things like that, it's kind of a turn off for most students in the beginning. So I recommend kind of staying away from that. So this is actually some things that are going to my next point here is you've got to keep their interest. This is number 4. Now, as a musician yourself, you probably have a strong desire and interest in music yourself, and you're driven, you're self-driven. You have your motivations, your ambitions. Maybe you play in a band, maybe you play gigs or whatever. And so you don't need the motivation. Maybe you're creative and you can find ways to kind of, experiment with the instrument or other things like that. But most beginners don't have that yet, or don't have that at all. So you really have to keep their interest and their motivation up. And the best way to do that is to play with them and to teach them songs and play songs with them, or teach them how to play songs with the recording off of the record in very simple ways. I usually look for songs that are really easy. For example, the tune Brain Stew by Green Day, if you know that one. It's an old Green Day tune using power chords. They're actually tuned down a half step, but you can play it in standard tuning. You can adjust the pitch on the recording if you have a software that does that. But you know, it's this thing. And that's like basically the whole song, which is a great song for beginners to learn because it's really repetitive, easy to remember. It's got a good rhythm. Now, I don't teach them to play power chords to start. It's too much on their hands and transitions fingers. I teach them one note at a time. So just this. That's it. May have to go slower. You might have to teach them the technique, like, okay, play, and put the pick back down on the string to stop the sound. You could show them a tab of this. You could say, hey, you see where the numbers are on the top string. Here's how tab works for an actual song. They go, oh, okay, I get it. Now I understand why this is important. So maybe it's something I should pay attention to. So then you start playing slowly with them, and now you're getting something going. And they can play with the record. You can play with a drum track. What I'll do is I'll have the students play the bass part, and then I'll play the melody of songs. So I could play another part. Right, so now we're interacting, we're playing music together. These are all things that kind of keep their interest up. And it's things that we can build on in future lessons as a teacher, because, you know, as a teacher, you got to watch out for this thing where you get into every lesson, you're just kind of explaining new things and just talking a lot. That's a surefire way to lose the student's interest. They're not going to really know what to retain from the lesson, and they're not going to really practice a lot at home. So they're going to come back in the next lesson with like nothing prepared, nothing ready for you, and then you're going to start over. You're probably going to be frustrated as a teacher, and usually things are just going to break off at a certain point. The student's going to want to quit. And unfortunately, you know, I've experienced that myself, and I had to figure out how to fix that and how to stop that. As a musician myself and being trained in, you know, academic settings and the universities, that was all great, but that doesn't work for beginners and that kind of stuff. So I had to kind of, you know, toss that out and use those skills to approach beginners in a different way. So the thing is, I think it's like if you teach them songs, then the next lesson is like, hey, let's play that song again. Like, okay, cool, I know that, you get into the playing. And for you as a teacher, and I know for myself, it's just more enjoyable. I mean, it can be exhausting having to explain something to a student over and over again. And particularly, you don't want to explain the same things over and over again because you're kind of losing patience with yourself and the student, and that leads to frustration. You want to cut that out. But you should be supportive and, you know, help them. If you do need to explain it again, that's okay. But if you teach them a song, usually they'll remember it, and then you can play it with them in the next lesson. It's something to build off of. And then you can add on other things to the song. So for Brain Stew, for example, once they're comfortable, you may say, hey, let's add in another string to make it a power chord, right? So it's a new skill that they can learn. It's something you can, you know, have a constant structure of the song, basic, and then kind of build on top of it, versus always teaching new things and new concepts. You're going to overwhelm the student, and you're going to get away from the playing, and it's not going to be enjoyable, and they're going to want to stop or quit. So that's really important to keep their interest. And I should also say that you also want to establish with them, like, hey, I'm going to play with you, I'm going to practice with you, I'm going to be supportive of you. So when they come into their next lesson, they know that they can depend on you and count on you. I would say this as a musician and a trained musician. If you're a trained musician or, you know, a driven musician, you know, you don't need somebody to practice with you necessarily as much, because you know how to do that on your own. And you know how to come prepared for your lesson and things like that. Well, beginner students are not really at that point. And if you're dealing with a student and they're coming in the next lesson, they got nothing for you, they didn't retain anything in the previous lesson, you might want to check what you're actually teaching them in the first lesson to kind of break that up and do more playing so they retain stuff next lesson. They don't really understand how to practice. They don't know the difference yet between playing and practice. They think the time with you is the practice time. So you should actually probably do that a lot with them so that they get the most out of the lesson with you and they feel good about the lesson, like, hey, this guy can help me. And you know, to expect them to practice or play a lot during the week in the beginning may be tough. They don't get it. They're on their own if they're a kid and they don't have parents that can help them and that kind of thing. You know, they're probably not going to. So in the next lesson, you may have to go over it again, and they'll remember songs more likely. So you can start off by playing that, and then they're going to feel like, hey, this guy's here to help me and not make me feel bad for not doing my homework. And a lot of teachers take that position on students, and it just creates a negative feedback loop, and then you're going to lose students, or you're going to be frustrated as a teacher, and it's not a good thing. So I think of it this way, like if you were going to a doctor and you had a problem, 2-3 years ago, I had a pinched nerve in my neck, excruciating pain. It was terrible. I went to the ER and they gave me prescription drugs and painkillers and all that kind of stuff. Did nothing. Went to massage therapy, did nothing. Went to the chiropractor, said, hey, I'm jacked up. I can't even function. I'm in so much pain right now. He's like, don't worry, we'll take care of you. We'll get you straightened out. He did it. He didn't tell me, hey, here's what you got to do to fix it yourself. He did it. So if somebody comes in with a problem for a lesson, say, I can't do this or this, you don't want to give them another problem, say, hey, you need to do this and go home and do that. You want to fix their problem for them in the lesson, problem solve it for them. They're going to love you for it. They're going to keep coming back to you. You're going to have a long-term student. You're going to be able to bring them along further in their progress, and it's just going to be a recipe for success. So be a problem solver. Don't give them problems in the lesson, and don't create a negative feedback loop. Okay, so the last thing is, again, just playing as much as possible. That was my 5th thing. Play as much as possible. Use songs that are simple, that have repetitive parts, that they can play along with the recordings at home, because that's probably the most interesting way for them to practice at home, is playing along with songs. I know that's how I got started. I didn't really know how to practice. I just knew how to play. I just started playing along with songs, and that was my practice, and you can gain a lot of skills by doing that. So that's super important. Keep them playing as much as possible. That's tip number 5. And so guys, I hope that really helps. Those are 5 tips there. So if you're just getting started out teaching, or struggling to kind of make some progress with your students and get a good foundation going, or a good rapport going, or build off of things and want to be less frustrated, I hope these tips really helped you. Please like and share this page or this video. Subscribe to the channel for more video content like this. I appreciate you watching this. And thanks again, and I'll see you guys in the next video.